Hello, everybody. This is the Authentic Pulse, and I wanted to give some insight and some thoughts into my journey as a father to special needs children. And I got some bullet points, and I want to give you insight on my journey. And this is just kind of done just to be transparent and to help anybody that is currently stuck in a situation that I could just maybe push them further down the line to knowing what they need to know, because I had to start from scratch and I wouldn't want any of you guys going through that. And it's a really tough situation as a single parent of three special needs children. But let's start getting into the topics, or the bullet points. So, when did you first learn your child had special needs? And as far as me, and just going back as far as I could remember, with my daughter, who has global developmental delay, but at first was diagnosed with autism, I noticed, because the doctors do a like a 18 month assessment, which is just like um, a multiple choice question type thing. And they they really told me and my kid's mom at the time that make sure they make eye contact, and if they are off to themselves and they go away from the crowd and they go into the corner of your housing unit, your house, your apartment, whatever, that might be signs. So that was kind of like the first signs for me, is that I always saw my daughter like kind of going to the corners of rooms, like being to herself on whatever she wanted to really play with. So that was kind of the first recollection for me. And just as far as learning, when she had it, or when I noticed that she was special needs, it kind of goes as far as, um, I can't remember how old she was, because my son was also getting um, diagnosed at the same time. I believe my daughter was getting diagnosed for the first time as she was 3 years old, because I remember my son was, um, he was two, and obviously he's a year older than, or he's a year younger than my daughter. So that was when the first diagnosis happened. And remember, I said first. So, and my opinion of that situation is that I feel like that was still really early, because there could be just things that children are not doing, that they're just not doing them. It's not, oh, they have a deficiency or anything like that. And I think that's the category that both my daughter and my first son fell into. So the first diagnosis for my daughter was at 3 years old, and the first diagnosis for my son was 2 years old. And just kind of a red flag in this situation that I always think back to is that my daughter at 3 years old was diagnosed with autism. Later, I got her re-diagnosed. I believe she was about, um, maybe 6 years old, because when I split with their mother, I got my first two children, my daughter and my son, re-diagnosed. So back to what I was saying, my daughter was initially diagnosed as autistic, but on the second diagnosis, when she was about 2 to 3 years older, she was diagnosed with global developmental delay. So she wasn't really autistic. Um, and my son, on the first diagnosis, which was the same session as my daughter, he was diagnosed with speech delay because he was nonverbal at the time, and when he got diagnosed later, as he was about 5 years old, he was diagnosed with nonverbal severe autism. So you don't always get it on the first shot, and that's my lesson: is that if a doctor says, I think that they are autistic or your child is autistic, try not to be devastated. Try to understand what it is, and that maybe with some, you know, immediate like intervention as far as resources and therapy for your child, things can change and things could actually progress. And early on is the best time to get this help. Unfortunately, I was not made aware of that, or learn that for my children. So stuff has kind of been delayed. So I just hope that you won't fall into the same bracket that I did as far as being, delayed on knowing about resources and everything like that. Um, what emotions did you experience in the beginning? In the beginning, I gotta say, as a man, as a father, I was in denial. And while my significant other at the time, she was just distraught, just that's a whole nother issue, but she was distraught, thinking the worst, and just almost counting the resources we were going to get because we had a child with a disability, two children at a disability at that time. And I'm not kind of, um, I'm not wired that way. And, when I was in the room and the doctor was telling me this, I was questioning it. I'm like, well, why are they autistic, and why does my son have a speech delay? Like, what makes you come to that like analysis, basically? And so I had I had a lot of questions. I had my mother in the room for moral support, and if you know my mother, she could talk a lot. And if there's a question that she asked it. So me kind of being timid about it, I kind of bounced off her, and I was asking questions like, why? Like, I don't get it. Um, what is the resolution? How do we fix this? How do we try to fix this? And I just wasn't basically as distraught as their mother. And I just, maybe it's the me being wired as a man. Obviously, I just wanted to figure out how to fix it, or see if there was a solution, or get on the road to trying to make this as less of a disability as it could be. Yeah. Okay. What misconceptions do you have before becoming a special needs parent? Um, One thing that I didn't realize, that, and I say this a lot, I say that I'm on an exile island, is because the a misconception is that people want to help you, or people um like respect you more, and they see you and see what you're doing, um or that they see your child and they don't judge them. Every parent that has a normal functioning child is going to judge you, is going to judge, your kid. And us as the parents of the special needs kids, I don't want to say we love them more, but we just, like, I sometimes I get caught just staring in my son's eyes, and like I love him so much, and I never knew a love like this was possible. And it makes you kind of build up animosity to people, because they just kind of look like at your child when they do something that is connected to their disability, that isn't a red flag to you because you're so used to it, that they kind of go like that. And you kind of build up animosity and stuff like that. I mean, I'm just gonna speak for myself, and um, one thing you will notice is that people, family, friends, everybody, they kind of distance themselves. You know, especially if you have a special needs child, and um, that is something that I didn't expect. That was a misconception of mine, and that's something as a a parent of a child with a disability is you just have to get used to, and you just have to be okay with it. Not okay to where you accept that, but okay to where you're gonna have to deal with that. And whether you want to fight back, that's me. Whether you want to ignore it, that's up to you. Um, but that is one of the misconceptions that I had, and yeah, I think that's the blaring misconception that I had. Okay, how did your life change after the diagnosis? That depends, honestly, because after my daughter was diagnosed, um, I just tried to get her resources as much as I could to help her out, but it was still very early on. And um, honestly, around the time that my daughter would be getting into school, I felt like it kept her more behind because it was during COVID, and my daughter, like at that time, I'm thinking she's autistic, needs more hands on, and to see what her skill set was. And I would get mad at the teacher on the what's that called, on the remote class, which was her first actual class in school. She wouldn't like involve my daughter in the class. So I was very upset about that, and just overall I was like, this is not going to work. So when COVID kind of let up, that's when her big kind of um, learning kind of came in full view. And I mean, how it changed my life is I felt like I was more hands on with my daughter and her learning than ever before. I was seeing what worked, what didn't. Um, and one thing that I do say, just as an example, is as far as her speech, Coco Melon was a lifesaver. She would watch Coco Melon because she loved it so much, and she would repeat what Coco Melon was saying. And by doing that, she was building her vocabulary and just her speech, and was progressing on her own, basically teaching herself. So that's something that I gotta say, how it changed my life. Um, it just wasn't going to be easy. Not that any parenting is easy, but it just wasn't going to be an easy road, and um, it was just going to be the biggest fight of my life. And little did I know that my son was going to be an even harder fight, because as that was basically for my daughter. But how did my life change when my son was diagnosed? It was just an eye opener, and on the second diagnosis, it was just more of a even bigger eye opener, because it was just, I just looking at my boy, I was just like, I love you so much, and I'm just gonna want to fight anybody that looks at you like you're different. And that's something you have to get over, because your son, your child is still your child. And how it changed my life is that I mean, from them until now, my son still does not speak. He's nonverbal, and it's hard. The way it's changed my life is that sometimes I just sit down, and I want to have a conversation with my son, because now I'm able to have a conversation with my daughter. She is a very good communicator, still working on things, but you can have a conversation with her. Put it to you that way. But my son, it's just. I think in life, how it changed my life is it humbled me, because you kind of see all these other parents just having kids learning as regular children do. And it just it just makes you kind of look in awe, like I wish I had it that easy, but those people over there don't know how lucky they are. And not that that's a bad thing, you know, but they just don't know. And I think that's what it did in my life, especially when my son was diagnosed with autism, that it changed my life by just humbling me and realizing that we can't just make strides in lump sums and in big portions, that it was going to be a step by step process for the rest of my life as, you know, my son's father. Okay. Okay. I'm going to do this other part. There's about like 5 bullet points, and then I'm going to, we'll do another live later on. Um, okay. Okay. Let me get back to that. Sorry. Okay. So the daily routines most people take for granted. Um, for me, I feel like because my children, more so, my first son that has autism, he elopes a lot, and he's so not aware of what he's doing for the most part, that we kind of have to be locked in to the house or wherever we're at. So we always need a stable environment. We can't just like go to the park and just while out and everybody goes whatever direction they want to go in. Because I often say, like, in that situation, is that my mom sometimes will get on my case, and I will tell her to explain to you what thought process I have, and that my son elopes like that, and so does my daughter to an extent, is that I will have to pick what child do I want to come home with, because they will go in opposite directions. And while my daughter might respond, my son will completely just run away. So, um, and I've had scares of that before too, which is very hard. And just the everyday, like the everyday activity is probably the daily routine that most people take for granted, because people don't realize how much special needs parents like have anxiety, and have like anxiety over planning every movement that's going to happen in that day, even if they're just having anxiety over like the next 30 minutes. And is this a safe area? Can I keep them contained here? Um, do the other parents um, know about my child and their disabilities? And if I'm looking the other way, will I at least know that the parent will like kind of guardrail them away from just running off? Like, so it's, and that's just a few things. Like, it's a constant like battle in your mind that some people really don't get. And maybe that's the daily routine thing, that the anxiety for every single event is just crazy. And that's not something going into being a parent of a special needs child that I ever thought I would have to deal with. It's just something you become accustomed to. Okay. Navigating schools, IEPs, and services. Well, this is a big one. You know, I have a lot of sub stories for these. Navigating schools first. Don't just trust a teacher. You know what I mean? Um, it's hard because where I'm at now with, you know, my kids, like, I believe in their teachers and everything, and they're very good communication. But to start, To start, it was very hard. Just an incident where like my son and daughter were at this one elementary, and they got transferred to this other elementary because they were putting in a autism class. So they would both go there in another city, which, obviously made it, harder on me, but I was like sucking it up as a parent. I was just like, if it's for the betterment of the kids, like I want to make the sacrifice. So did that, but then I would just notice as a parent, um, the teacher, every time I was greeted by the teacher, it was always some kind of concern about my son, and concern about my daughter's behavior, even though she had a behavioral list already. And um, they didn't invest in my son and daughter. And I could tell because they were more worried about getting sufficient snacks for the kids than updating me on what progress they've made, or this is where they need to learn and stuff like that. And even, I'm going to talk about IEPs in a minute. On There was no IEP notes on my kids, and that meant that they were being neglected in class, not documented, any, like, positive, negatives, whatever things to work on. And um, I didn't find that out until after, and I already had it in works. The next IEP, I got them. What I didn't think that I was able to do is what I was able to do, and I actually got the class that they were transferred for. I got it transferred back to the previous school because there's only one class of this provided per district, and it was moved back to the previous school where I was more comfortable with my kids, and they got transferred back because I complained and voiced my opinion, um, and my concerns, obviously. So schools, like, parents, trust your own instincts, and if you have a weird feeling about something, know that that feeling is valid. But okay, so IEPs. I've never really had a problem with IEPs, but if you have a special needs children, you definitely need to have one of these. And um, it's just a individual education plan, and um, it just kind of gauges where your child is. You have one yearly for your child, and I think these are definitely a strength of the education plan. And these are where you fight for resources. You try to talk to the teachers, see what they could provide or what they think direction your child is going in. And bottom line, I think they're good and very needed. Um, and as far as services, I just, I don't know if I wasn't aware, or if these resources and services like regional centers and stuff like that were just so lackadaisical to when I was going after the resources. But everything took so long, and the only reason I got resources, and this is my advice to you parents out there, is that you just need to always voice your opinion. If you feel someone's slacking, you have to voice your concerns. And that's what I did. But I got resources like, my autistic son, he is still in diapers. So I got the diaper program from these resources. And what else did I get? And they offer you respite for parents that need a break, and someone could come in for a couple hours and just let you go grocery shopping or stuff like that. And I just got that after trying for like 4 years, and that goes along with ABA therapy that I got um, just recently got from my autistic son. I was trying for ABA therapy for like 4 years, and I wasn't getting anywhere closer. Stuff with like paperwork was timing out, and then I'd have to start over. And they're just not very vocal on like what you have to do. So it's it's very hard. And you just like as me, I just would get pissed off all the time because I'm like, the system is failing my child, and like, you guys don't care. Like, only I do, and my son obviously cares as the person that it's affecting. And sometimes it's just hard. And resources, you gotta keep on getting it. You gotta keep on trying, keep on trying, keep on trying. Even at the regional centers, their turnover rate with your workers are like so frequent. That was a problem I had where I couldn't get anything to move forward. So you just gotta be persistent, and the resources that you need, never be afraid to push the envelope on it. And they're hard to get, but they are very much worth it. Um, Small wins that others might overlook. I mean, there's so many, especially with my son. You know, I see other kids in my family that are the same age or close to the age of my son, and the parents are just talking to them, and it's just like such a beautiful thing. And I think that's something that is taken for granted. The fact that, like, I mean, I don't even know if the right word is taking it for granted, but um, or being overlooked is how you could just speak to your child. And that's something that I believe in it, and I believe one day I will speak to my son. Um, and we could have a conversation in the future, but that's something that I feel like it's overlooked. Is just um, it's just a hard thing as a father to deal with. But um, lessons your child has taught you about your life. Have patience. Honestly, um, patience is something that I knew I had, but I didn't know how much of it I did have. And um, yeah, just patience. If you have an autistic child, you have to be patient, because you could be trying 20 times, and then the 21st time they do what you're actually asking them, and it's like um it's so heartwarming, honestly. And just seeing like uh the little wins shows me how humble I am about my life. um and um my special needs kids have just taught me the patience, and the fact that the road that I was on before I had kids was the road I needed to go on, especially being in view of a single parent. Um, and I thought she had it hard, but the table and the cards I've been dealt um, is like tenfold. And it's crazy hard. I don't even want to lie to you guys, but what my kids have taught me about my life is to be humble, and um, you have more patience than you would ever like think that you would have. And on that note, I am going to get out of here, and I appreciate you guys that have watched. And there will be more content of this. This is kind of like a first parter. I'll have other topics. Summer's been hard with my kids, so they're almost back to school in a couple weeks. So I'll be able to put out more content like this. And if you have any questions, feel free to just drop comments. Um, I love reaching out to people um, that have the same adversities that I have. And yeah, make sure you drop a like, you put some comments on these topics, and make sure you hit the subscribe button. This has been the Authentic Pulse. Till next time.